Most people spend their entire lives chasing wealth, running toward it like a mirage on the horizon, hoping that with enough effort, with enough hours, with enough hustle, the money will finally catch up to them. And yet most remain tired, frustrated, and stuck. Why? Because wealth, real wealth, does not respond to chasing. It responds to attraction. The truth is this: wealth is not something you pursue, it is something you become aligned with. And the shift that separates the wealthy from the struggling is not a financial strategy, it is a mental orientation. It's a decision to stop thinking like a laborer and begin thinking like a creator. Because the moment you stop asking, how do I get money, and start asking, how do I create value that makes money chase me, everything changes. The entire axis of your life pivots. You move from reaction to direction, from scarcity to abundance, from chasing to receiving. And that shift, once made, is irreversible. Now let me ask you, what do you believe wealth is? Most people confuse wealth with income, but income is not wealth. Income is a stream. Wealth is a reservoir. Income is what you earn while working. Wealth is what remains when you stop. And wealth doesn't just show up in the bank account, it shows up in mindset, in daily choices, in how you think about time, energy, and contribution. The individual meant to attract wealth understands that it begins with value, that all money is a byproduct of service rendered, that behind every dollar is a decision made by someone to exchange value. So if you want more wealth, the question becomes simple: how much value are you producing? And more importantly, how rare, how needed, and how trusted is that value? Because money flows toward value like water flows toward gravity. You don't chase water downhill, you stand where it's going and let it come to you. Here's the mental shift I want you to adopt. Stop thinking like an earner and start thinking like an owner. The earner trades time for money. The owner builds systems that trade value for money. One is finite, the other is exponential. The earner wakes up every morning wondering how they'll make ends meet. The owner wakes up asking how they'll multiply what they've built. This shift doesn't require a title, a business, or even a large bank account. It requires a new set of decisions. It requires you to look at your current skills, knowledge, relationships, and habits and begin converting them into scalable assets. An asset is anything that continues to pay you after the work is done. That could be a book, a business, a brand, or even a well-placed piece of advice that turns into long-term opportunity. The person who thinks like an owner doesn't just work hard, they work wisely, and over time the wise out-earn the workers. Because wisdom multiplies, labor eventually taps out. Let's go even deeper. The individual who attracts wealth does not see money as scarce, they see it as abundant. Not because they've been handed riches, but because they've studied the patterns. They've seen that money is constantly in motion, changing hands, moving through industries, flowing to those who anticipate need and deliver value. Scarcity says, there's not enough to go around. Abundance says, there's more than enough for those who solve real problems. This isn't naive optimism, it's a disciplined belief backed by action. When you approach life with the mindset that money is everywhere, you stop shrinking, you start expanding. You start speaking differently, asking better questions, offering more useful ideas, and surrounding yourself with those who challenge you to rise. The world, you see, does not respond to desperation. It responds to certainty. And certainty comes from preparation, clarity, and belief that there is a seat for you at the table if you're willing to show up ready to contribute. Now I want you to take out a notepad and write this down. Wealth is attracted to responsibility, not dreams, not wishes, not even talent, unless it is managed well. The person who attracts wealth is the person who can handle it, who treats the small things with excellence before they're trusted with bigger things. If you cannot manage $100, you won't manage 100,000. If you ignore details, deadlines, and discipline, the universe withholds increase, not to punish you but to protect you. Wealth amplifies who you are. It doesn't change your nature, it reveals it. So if you want more wealth, you must increase your capacity. Become the kind of person who doesn't just earn but stewards, who doesn't just hope but plans, who doesn't just react but anticipates. That kind of person doesn't need to chase money. They attract it, because the world is always searching for someone who can be trusted with more. Let's speak now about contribution. This is the golden thread that ties all wealth together. Those who are wealthy in mind and in bank understand that their income is directly tied to how well they serve. That doesn't mean servitude, it means creation, innovation, leadership. Whether it's through a product, a service, an idea, or an insight, wealth begins when you shift from extraction to contribution. The question is no longer what can I get? It becomes what can I give that the market will reward? And the market is always fair. It may not be immediate, but it is accurate. If you sow, you will reap. If you give, you will receive. And if you become known as a person who solves problems, who relieves pain, who simplifies the complex, then wealth in all its forms will begin to seek you out. Not by force, by resonance, by alignment with the laws of value and compensation. The final shift for today is this: you must see wealth as internal before it becomes external. Most people wait to feel wealthy until they see numbers on a screen. But the individual meant for real wealth cultivates it from within first. They think with abundance, speak with gratitude, act with integrity, live with vision, and from that internal state they begin to build the habits, relationships, and strategies that lead to external results. Wealth is not something you wait for. It is something you practice every day in how you treat your body, your time, your commitments, your reputation. You either honor your potential or you sell it short, and those who honor it, who elevate their standards, who discipline their focus, those are the ones who wake up one day and find that wealth has begun to chase them, not because they were lucky, but because they became magnetic to opportunity through character, contribution, and clarity. So if you've been chasing money, pause, shift, ask instead, how do I become the kind of person that money cannot ignore? How do I raise my thinking, my service, my self-image to match the level of wealth I desire? Because the answer is not out there. It's in here, in your decision, in your standards, in your mindset. Wealth begins in the invisible. It moves through your thoughts, your habits, your identity, and only then does it show up in your results. And if you can adopt this one mental shift, this core idea that wealth chases those who create value, live in truth, and operate with clarity, then the chase ends, and the building begins. And from that point forward, everything changes. Most people never pause long enough to ask, what is my actual relationship with money? They think about money often, they worry about it, they strive for it, but they never stop to examine the deeper wiring that governs how they see it. And that wiring, those mental scripts, are often inherited, unconscious, and self-defeating. If you were taught that money is scarce, that it's evil, that it's only for certain types of people, then you will unconsciously sabotage your ability to earn, keep, or grow it. Because the subconscious mind always seeks to confirm what it believes is true. And if you believe that wealth is wrong or dangerous or unattainable, then even if money comes your way, you'll push it away, lose it, or find a way to remain small. That's why the real work begins in the mind, not the market. Until you change your beliefs, your bank account cannot rise. You may get lucky, you may have short bursts of success, but it will never last unless your self-image supports it. The wealthy think differently. They don't see money as something that defines their worth, but they understand its utility. They respect money, not worship it. They use it to solve problems, to expand opportunity, to create leverage. They don't feel guilty for having it, and they don't resent others for earning it. Why? Because they've broken free from the emotional attachments that bind most people. They don't assign morality to wealth, they assign responsibility, and that responsibility creates freedom. They don't view money as an escape, they view it as a tool. And like any tool, when used skillfully, it builds. When used recklessly, it destroys. That's why those who are truly wealthy invest in learning how money works. They study wealth the way an athlete studies movement or a musician studies rhythm. Because once you understand the laws that govern something, you can work with it instead of against it. Let me challenge you with this. Your financial thermostat is set by your beliefs, and it will always pull you back to its default setting unless you consciously raise it. That means if you're used to surviving, your mind will resist thriving. If you're used to just getting by, you will feel strange, even guilty, when you begin to prosper. And unless you reprogram that thermostat, unless you consciously raise your internal standard, every promotion, every opportunity, every breakthrough will be temporary, because the subconscious mind is wired for equilibrium, and if wealth feels unfamiliar, it will sabotage it. So what do? You change what's familiar. You begin speaking the language of wealth. You begin exposing yourself to people who normalize abundance. You begin shifting your environment, your inputs, your conversations, not with arrogance but with intention. Because what you normalize, you magnetize, and what you tolerate, you replicate. The choice is always yours. Here's something you'll rarely hear. The way you talk about money reveals more about your future than the amount of money you currently have. If your language is filled with lack, phrases like, "I can't afford that," "money doesn't grow on trees," or "rich people are greedy," you are programming your mind to associate wealth with limitation, fear, and separation. And the mind will never pursue what it perceives as dangerous or wrong. But when you shift your language to empowerment, to phrases like, "How can I afford this?" or "What value can I create to increase my income?" you open the gates of possibility. You turn your brain into a solution-finding engine, and over time that language shift becomes a lifestyle shift, because your words shape your focus, and your focus determines your results. The wealthy understand this. That's why they guard their language. They speak in terms of opportunity, not just obstacles. Growth, not just survival. Let's speak about time. Because time, not money, is your most precious currency. And the way you use your time reflects your actual beliefs about wealth. If you trade all your time for low-value tasks, if your calendar is filled with reaction instead of creation, then no financial breakthrough will ever stick. Wealthy individuals buy time, not trinkets. They invest in systems, automation, delegation, anything that gives them leverage. Because they understand a truth most people miss. You can always earn more money, but you can never earn more time. And the way you treat your hours today will determine the options you have tomorrow. So ask yourself honestly, are you using your time in a way that compounds? Or are you stuck in loops that repeat the same week over and over, hoping for a different outcome? If you want wealth to chase you, you must first become someone who uses time in a way that attracts opportunity, not just consumes it. Now let's go even deeper. Wealth in its truest form is not measured in dollars, it is measured in options. In peace, in the ability to say no to what doesn't serve you and yes to what elevates you. That kind of freedom doesn't come from a number, it comes from a structure. And that structure is built day by day, decision by decision, with discipline and vision. The individual meant to build wealth doesn't wait for discipline to arrive, they manufacture it. They treat their future like it's urgent. They keep their word even when no one is watching. They create budgets, they track progress, they optimize. Not because they're obsessed with money, but because they're building a life where money is a servant, not a master. And when money becomes your servant, you stop fearing it, you stop fighting it, you begin using it to multiply your impact, your peace, your purpose. If you've been conditioned to see money as a source of stress, it's time to flip the script. Begin seeing money as a mirror. It reflects your patterns, your priorities, your patience. If the reflection is unclear, don't judge it, adjust it. The person who is meant to attract wealth does not wallow in guilt, shame, or self-pity. They step into ownership. They say, if money is not flowing, I am not yet aligned, and then they adjust. They study, they shift, they ask better questions, they eliminate waste, they increase output, and most importantly, they take responsibility, because money flows to clarity. And when you are clear, consistent, and courageous, when you show up with purpose, contribute with intention, and lead with integrity, money finds its way to you, because the marketplace is always looking for someone reliable to reward. So let me ask you now, what shift will you make today? Not tomorrow, not when it's convenient. Today, will you begin seeing yourself as someone worthy of abundance? Will you speak the language of wealth even if it feels foreign at first? Will you treat your time like treasure? Will you raise your financial thermostat, audit your patterns, and reprogram your mindset? Because that is how the shift happens. Not all at once, but decisively. You don't need to change everything overnight. You need to change direction. And once your direction is clear, the momentum will come. The strategies will appear. The people will show up. And wealth, real wealth, not just in dollars, but in options, in confidence, in peace, will begin to find its way into your life. There comes a point in every wealth builder's journey when they must confront a subtle but dangerous mindset, the belief that effort alone guarantees results. Most people have been conditioned to equate hard work with reward. They believe that if they simply grind long enough, if they put in enough hours, success will eventually arrive. But this belief, while noble on the surface, is incomplete, because effort without direction is wasted motion. Hustle without alignment is noise without melody. And the marketplace does not reward effort, it rewards value. Not how hard you try, but how well you solve. Not how many hours you work, but how much clarity you bring to the problem. The individual meant to attract wealth eventually realizes that results don't just come from action, they come from intelligent, leveraged, high-impact action. And when that realization hits, the game changes forever. You must understand this. There is no prize for exhaustion. There is no badge for burnout. You do not become wealthy by depleting yourself. You become wealthy by aligning your energy with outcomes that matter. That means stepping back from the chaos long enough to ask, what is truly moving the needle? What actions are actually multiplying my value? What systems am I building that will pay me later for what I do today? The person who is building wealth is not obsessed with looking busy. They're obsessed with building things that last. They do less but better. They don't chase every opportunity, they choose a few and they go deep. And in doing so, they unlock something most never find: focus. The kind of focus that creates momentum, the kind of momentum that creates compound results, and the kind of results that attract wealth like gravity attracts mass. Let me give you a principle that has transformed countless lives: the 80-20 rule. 80% of your results will come from 20% of your activities. That means most of what you're doing is not moving you forward. It may be keeping you occupied, but it's not creating value. The wealthy understand this. That's why they are relentless about identifying their highest value tasks and either eliminating, delegating, or automating the rest. They ask, what's the one thing I can do today that if done well will make everything else easier or irrelevant? That's not laziness. That's wisdom. Because time is not just money, it's life. And if you're pouring your life into things that don't build wealth, then no financial breakthrough will change your future. Because even if more money comes, you'll waste it through misalignment. So start now. Audit your actions, raise your standards, focus on the few things that truly matter. Now let's talk about leverage. This is one of the most misunderstood ideas in wealth creation. Leverage means doing something once and being paid repeatedly. It means using tools, systems, networks, and knowledge to create exponential returns. Most people work linearly. 1 hour, $1, one task, one outcome. But the wealthy build leverage. They write books. They build businesses. They create intellectual property. They invest in platforms. They mentor others. They do things once that continue to create value without further effort. And they understand that the most powerful form of leverage is not money, it's ideas. One idea executed well can feed a family for a generation. One solution delivered with excellence can scale into a business, a movement, a legacy. That is what wealth is built on. Not just motion, but multiplication. Not just activity, but architecture. Here's something few are willing to admit. Your ability to receive wealth is directly tied to your willingness to lead. Leadership is not about control, it's about clarity, responsibility, and initiative. It means being the one who decides, the one who shows up when others shrink, the one who goes first, who carries the weight, who owns the outcome. The marketplace doesn't just pay for labor, it pays for leadership. The person who solves the bigger problem, who sees the bigger picture, who takes the bigger risk, earns the bigger reward. So if you want to attract wealth, step into leadership, not just on paper, but in behavior. Lead yourself with discipline, lead your day with structure, lead your work with excellence, and eventually you will lead others through your example, your ideas, your consistency, because real wealth follows leadership, and leadership begins within. Let me challenge you now to reimagine your value. Stop thinking of yourself as an employee or even an entrepreneur. Begin seeing yourself as an asset. You are the product, you are the investment. And every thought you think, every habit you repeat, every decision you make is either appreciating or depreciating your value in the marketplace. When you read, you grow. When you execute, you sharpen. When you serve, you increase your worth. But when you waste time, when you lower your standards, when you neglect your craft, you decrease your value. Wealth chases those who increase their value. And value is not about charisma. It's about consistency. It's about becoming a person of such rare reliability, clarity, and depth that the world takes notice. That's how wealth moves. Not toward noise, but toward signal. Not toward chaos, but toward competence. One more shift for today, perhaps the most powerful of all. Begin seeing problems as invitations, not interruptions. The average person avoids problems. They resent them, complain about them. But the wealthy understand that every fortune is born from a problem well solved. Problems are the birthplace of opportunity, of innovation, of leverage. When you train your mind to love problems, you train your spirit to lead. You stop hiding and start solving. You stop reacting and start designing. Every business, every breakthrough, every invention you admire exists because someone looked at a problem and asked, how can I serve here? And then they did. And because of that, value was created, and value, as we've said, always attracts wealth. So the next time you're frustrated, pause, flip the frame, ask, what's the opportunity here? How can I be the one who solves this faster, smarter, better? That is how wealth begins, not with more effort, but with new eyes. If you've absorbed this today, I want you to reflect deeply. Are you working hard, or are you working wise? Are you exhausting yourself, or are you aligning yourself? Are you chasing money, or are you becoming someone it cannot ignore? Because when you choose alignment over activity, value over vanity, leverage over labor, you unlock a flow of wealth that others never experience. Not because you're luckier, but because you've stepped into the mindset of a builder, a solver, a leader. And that mindset, once chosen, changes everything. There comes a point in every wealth builder's journey when they must confront a subtle but dangerous mindset, the belief that effort alone guarantees results. Most people have been conditioned to equate hard work with reward. They believe that if they simply grind long enough, if they put in enough hours, success will eventually arrive. But this belief, while noble on the surface, is incomplete, because effort without direction is wasted motion. Hustle without alignment is noise without melody. And the marketplace does not reward effort, it rewards value. Not how hard you try, but how well you solve. Not how many hours you work, but how much clarity you bring to the problem. The individual meant to attract wealth eventually realizes that results don't just come from action. They come from intelligent, leveraged, high-impact action. And when that realization hits, the game changes forever. You must understand this. There is no prize for exhaustion. There is no badge for burnout. You do not become wealthy by depleting yourself. You become wealthy by aligning your energy with outcomes that matter. That means stepping back from the chaos long enough to ask, what is truly moving the needle? What actions are actually multiplying my value? What systems am I building that will pay me later for what I do today? The person who is building wealth is not obsessed with looking busy. They're obsessed with building things that last. They do less but better. They don't chase every opportunity. They choose a few and they go deep. And in doing so, they unlock something most never find: focus. The kind of focus that creates momentum. The kind of momentum that creates compound results. And the kind of results that attract wealth like gravity attracts mass. Let me give you a principle that has transformed countless lives: the 80-20 rule. 80% of your results will come from 20% of your activities. That means most of what you're doing is not moving you forward. It may be keeping you occupied, but it's not creating value. The wealthy understand this. That's why they are relentless about identifying their highest value tasks and either eliminating, delegating, or automating the rest. They ask, what's the one thing I can do today that if done well will make everything else easier or irrelevant? That's not laziness, that's wisdom, because time is not just money, it's life. And if you're pouring your life into things that don't build wealth, then no financial breakthrough will change your future, because even if more money comes, you'll waste it through misalignment. So start now. Audit your actions, raise your standards, focus on the few things that truly matter. Now let's talk about leverage. This is one of the most misunderstood ideas in wealth creation. Leverage means doing something once and being paid repeatedly. It means using tools, systems, networks, and knowledge to create exponential returns. Most people work linearly: 1 hour, $1, one task, one outcome. But the wealthy build leverage. They write books. They build businesses. They create intellectual property. They invest in platforms. They mentor others. They do things once that continue to create value without further effort. And they understand that the most powerful form of leverage is not money, it's ideas. One idea executed well can feed a family for a generation. One solution delivered with excellence can scale into a business, a movement, a legacy. That is what wealth is built on: not just motion but multiplication, not just activity but architecture. Here's something few are willing to admit: your ability to receive wealth is directly tied to your willingness to lead. Leadership is not about control. It's about clarity, responsibility, and initiative. It means being the one who decides, the one who shows up when others shrink, the one who goes first, who carries the weight, who owns the outcome. The marketplace doesn't just pay for labor, it pays for leadership. The person who solves the bigger problem, who sees the bigger picture, who takes the bigger risk, earns the bigger reward. So if you want to attract wealth, step into leadership, not just on paper but in behavior. Lead yourself with discipline, lead your day with structure, lead your work with excellence. And eventually you will lead others through your example, your ideas, your consistency, because real wealth follows leadership, and leadership begins within. Let me challenge you now to reimagine your value. Stop thinking of yourself as an employee or even an entrepreneur. Begin seeing yourself as an asset. You are the product. You are the investment. And every thought you think, every habit you repeat, every decision you make is either appreciating or depreciating your value in the marketplace. When you read, you grow. When you execute, you sharpen. When you serve, you increase your worth. But when you waste time, when you lower your standards, when you neglect your craft, you decrease your value. Wealth chases those who increase their value. And value is not about charisma, it's about consistency. It's about becoming a person of such rare reliability, clarity, and depth that the world takes notice. That's how wealth moves. Not toward noise, but toward signal. Not toward chaos, but toward competence. One more shift for today, perhaps the most powerful of all. Begin seeing problems as invitations, not interruptions. The average person avoids problems. They resent them, complain about them, but the wealthy understand that every fortune is born from a problem well solved. Problems are the birthplace of opportunity, of innovation, of leverage. When you train your mind to love problems, you train your spirit to lead. You stop hiding and start solving. You stop reacting and start designing. Every business, every breakthrough, every invention you admire exists because someone looked at a problem and asked, "How can I serve here?" And then they did. And because of that, value was created. And value, as we've said, always attracts wealth. So the next time you're frustrated, pause, flip the frame, ask, what's the opportunity here? How can I be the one who solves this faster, smarter, better? That is how wealth begins, not with more effort, but with new eyes. If you've absorbed this today, I want you to reflect deeply. Are you working hard or are you working wise? Are you exhausting yourself or are you aligning yourself? Are you chasing money or are you becoming someone it cannot ignore? Because when you choose alignment over activity, value over vanity, leverage over labor, you unlock a flow of wealth that others never experience. Not because you're luckier, but because you've stepped into the mindset of a builder, a solver, a leader, and that mindset once chosen changes everything. There is a moment in the journey toward wealth where something fundamental breaks, and what breaks is the belief that you must do it all alone. Many people wear independence like a badge of honor, believing that to build something great, they must carry the full weight themselves. They pride themselves on being the hardest worker in the room, the first to arrive and the last to leave. But those who attract real wealth eventually learn that independence is only a stage. The final form is interdependence. It's not about doing less, it's about doing what only you can do and empowering others to do the rest. The wealthy build networks, teams, partnerships, alliances, not because they're weak, but because they understand leverage. They understand that every great enterprise, every scalable idea, every enduring legacy was built not by a lone genius, but by a coordinated vision executed through people. And the moment you stop trying to do everything alone, wealth begins to accelerate, not linearly, but exponentially. Let me give you something clear and practical. Wealthy individuals think in terms of systems. The average person thinks in terms of tasks, lists, emergencies. The wealthy think in systems, processes, flows. They ask, how can this be done without me? How can I create repeatable, scalable outcomes that don't depend on my constant effort? This mindset unlocks freedom, because when your income is tied to systems instead of your presence, you gain leverage over time, you gain choice, you gain control. Systems are the great equalizer. You don't need to be a genius to build one. You need to be committed, observant, and intentional. If you can document what works, if you can simplify what repeats, if you can delegate what's been optimized, you can build something that earns while you sleep, scales while you rest, and grows even while you're silent. That is not fantasy. That is systems thinking. And systems thinking is a wealth mindset. Another overlooked wealth secret is timing, not luck, but rhythm. Timing is the skill of sensing when to move, when to wait, when to double down, and when to walk away. The wealthy have developed this rhythm through pattern recognition. They've trained themselves to watch for opportunity, to listen to shifts in the market, to observe the cycles of emotion, demand, innovation. They don't just react to the moment, they anticipate it. Because they understand that wealth is not just about doing the right thing, it's about doing the right thing at the right time. And the only way to sense that timing is to remain present, prepared, and disciplined. You must be doing the work when others are distracted. You must be learning while others are scrolling. You must be positioning yourself long before the opportunity arrives, because once it does, it's too late to prepare. The person who is meant to attract wealth becomes a student of rhythm, of timing, of readiness. Now let's speak about identity, because every wealth transformation is preceded by an identity shift. You cannot become wealthy while clinging to a self-image of scarcity. You cannot build abundance with the habits of someone who believes they are unworthy. Wealth demands that you step into the identity of someone who expects results, not hopes for them, but expects them. And that expectation is not arrogance, it is alignment. It says, I've done the work, I've set the standard, I've earned this outcome, and I am ready to manage it. The individual who attracts wealth becomes that identity before the world affirms it. They walk into the room with presence. They sit down at the table prepared. They show up early, stay late, and carry themselves with quiet certainty. Not because of external validation, but because their internal standard no longer allows anything less. When you change your identity, your results will follow, but never before. Let me give you another shift that unlocks the flow of wealth: clarity. Clarity is more powerful than charisma, more magnetic than effort, more profitable than hustle. Clarity is the signal that cuts through the noise. The person with clarity speaks fewer words but moves faster. They don't dabble, they don't hesitate, they don't need to be everything to everyone. They know who they serve, what they offer, why it matters, and how to deliver it with excellence. That clarity attracts clients, partners, investors, and opportunities. Because in a world drowning in confusion, clarity is a currency, and those who have it are trusted. If you want wealth to find you, stop trying to be impressive. Start becoming clear. Define your value, sharpen your message, build your system, make your process visible, and then stay consistent until the market takes notice, which it always does eventually. One of the hardest, most transformative truths in the journey to wealth is this: you must confront and outgrow your emotional addictions. That means letting go of drama, of self-pity, of the comfort of excuses. It means no longer needing to be rescued, no longer defining yourself by the struggle. It means choosing power over pity, structure over stories, and results over reputation. Most people are more addicted to their struggle than they are committed to their solution. But the individual who is meant to succeed, who is meant to attract wealth, lets go of the need to be seen as the victim. They stop waiting for understanding. They stop hoping to be validated. And instead they rise, they lead, they create, they win silently. They outgrow patterns that no longer match their vision. And in doing so, they make space for wealth, not just financially, but energetically, mentally, spiritually. Let's speak about peace. Real wealth is not noisy. It is quiet. It is steady. It is secure. The person who has built real wealth does not need to flex, to prove, to announce. Their life becomes the proof. Their calendar reflects peace. Their body reflects discipline. Their home reflects order. Their conversations reflect clarity. And this peace is not accidental. It is designed. It is protected. It is chosen. If you want wealth to pursue you, begin cultivating peace. Create an environment that mirrors where you want to go. Eliminate noise, raise standards, build boundaries. Choose calm over chaos. Choose focus over frenzy. Because peace is not passive. It is productive. It gives you the bandwidth to think, to create, to lead. And the marketplace rewards those who can lead from peace, because that kind of leader is rare. You are already feeling the shift. Not because you heard something new, but because you remembered something true. You were not made to chase forever. You were made to create, to serve, to build. And as you do, wealth in all its forms will begin to turn its head in your direction. Not because of force, but because of alignment. You will feel it first in your mind, then in your behavior, then in your results. And once you've tasted it, once you've lived with clarity, with structure, with peace, there will be no going back. The chase ends, the building begins. And the world quietly begins to follow your lead. There is a defining characteristic that separates those who flirt with wealth from those who live in it, and that characteristic is stewardship. You see, most people fantasize about abundance, but they mismanage what they already have. They talk about millions while ignoring the details of their current financial life. They want investment opportunities, but they avoid budgeting. They want freedom, but they lack order. But wealth is not drawn to disorder. It is not sustained by emotion. It is magnetized by those who manage wisely, consistently, and intentionally. The person who is truly meant to attract wealth treats every resource, every dollar, every hour, every relationship with care, not with scarcity, but with respect. They don't hoard, but they also don't squander. They measure, they optimize, they prepare, because they know that the way you manage a little reveals everything about how you will manage a lot. And wealth, like any powerful force, tests you in small ways before it trusts you in large ones. Stewardship means treating your money as a servant, not a savior. It means knowing where it goes, why it's going there, and what it's doing in your name. The wealthy don't just track finances, they assign purpose to every dollar. They allocate funds not just for needs and wants, but for growth, for giving, for long-term vision. They build systems that protect their time, their mind, their energy, and they live by structure, not rigidity, but rhythm. A rhythm of review, reflection, and refinement. While most people fear looking at their accounts, the wealthy look often, not to obsess, but to stay engaged, aware, and responsible. This engagement creates momentum, and momentum creates control. The one who stewards their current level with excellence is silently broadcasting to the world, "I am ready for more." Let's talk now about giving. Because giving, when done from the right posture, is one of the most powerful wealth accelerators in existence. It seems counterintuitive, how can you gain by giving? But the truth is, giving expands you. It shifts your identity from consumer to contributor. It teaches your subconscious mind that there is always more. that you are not defined by your balance sheet, but by your ability to bless, to serve, to elevate others. The wealthy do not fear generosity. They see it as a flow. They give strategically, with vision, with clarity, and in doing so, they open channels that others never experience. Not just spiritual channels, but practical ones, networks, referrals, opportunities. Giving is not just about money. It's about value, attention, time, encouragement, expertise. When you give freely, without desperation, you move from scarcity to abundance in real time, and the world feels that shift. Here is a discipline that almost no one talks about, yet every wealth builder lives by. Reflection. Reflection is how you learn faster than others. It's how you prevent small errors from becoming large losses. The average person rushes from task to task, month to month, year to year, never stopping to study the patterns. But the wealthy sit down regularly in silence with a pen and a notebook and ask, what's working? What's not? Where did my time go this week? What decisions paid off? Which ones did not? How did I show up in conversations, in meetings, in my habits? This level of honest reflection doesn't just create insight, it creates maturity. It sharpens your edge, and wealth flows to those who are willing to examine, adjust, and evolve with precision. Because speed without feedback is how people burn out. But speed plus reflection, that's how you lap the field. Wealth builders also understand this. Relationships are capital. Not all relationships, but the right ones. The people you surround yourself with are either compounding your mindset or contaminating it. They're either elevating your standards or eroding them. And this applies to every circle, personal, professional, digital. The individual meant for wealth is ruthless, not cruel, but clear about proximity. They ask who challenges me to rise, who drains my energy, who expands my vision just by how they live. They do not network blindly. They build alliances. They mentor and are mentored. They sharpen and are sharpened because they've learned a simple truth. You don't need more followers. You need more advisors, more examples, more accountability. You need to be around people who normalize the life you're building, not resent it. And when your circle is aligned, your rise becomes inevitable. Let's speak for a moment about endurance. Wealth creation is not a weekend project. It is not a 90-day sprint. It is a lifelong rhythm. There will be seasons of breakthrough, yes, but also seasons of building, maintaining, refining, resting, and rising again. The wealthy do not panic when progress slows. They zoom out, they stay steady, because they know that compounding is not always visible, but it is always active. Every rep, every email, every saved dollar, every solved problem is a brick in the wall. Most people quit because they only measure in weeks, but wealth builders measure in decades. They have trained their emotions to serve their vision, not sabotage it. And because of that, they outlast the noise, the cycles, the trends. They become immovable, not because they never feel doubt, but because they've built disciplines that move anyway. There is one final mental posture I want to press into your awareness. Expectancy. Not entitlement, expectancy. The wealthy do not hope, they expect. Not because they're arrogant, but because they've aligned so thoroughly with their vision that the outcome is no longer a question, it is a matter of sequence. This expectancy fuels their speech, their energy, their posture. They enter the room with solutions. They wake up with urgency. They treat themselves like someone who matters, because they do. And the world in turn treats them the same. Expectancy means you look for opportunity. You anticipate favor. You interpret challenge as setup. And because of that, you keep moving, even when results lag. You are not confused. You are not shaken. You are aligned. And that alignment, practiced daily, becomes power. Power that draws in resources, relationships, and results without strain, because they now match the identity you've stepped into. You are beginning to see the shift now, not just intellectually, but viscerally. The words aren't just ideas, they are mirrors. They are showing you the version of yourself that wealth recognizes. And that version isn't loud, desperate, or erratic. It is clear, steady, intentional, giving, disciplined, focused. You don't have to force wealth. You have to align with it. And the more aligned you become, the more precise, generous, prepared, and wise, the more you'll find that wealth does what it's always done. It follows structure. It chases clarity. It rewards stewardship. And if you're ready, truly ready, then the next step is simple. Walk in the identity you've just remembered. Not tomorrow, now. Every individual who builds lasting wealth eventually confronts a final question, one that separates builders from consumers, leaders from followers, creators from copycats. And the question is this: what legacy am I constructing? Not just what I'm earning, not just what I'm achieving, but what I am leaving behind through the shape of my choices, the weight of my character, and the example of my life. Because wealth is not truly measured in accumulation, it is measured in impact. It is measured in the lives you touch, the systems you leave in place, the lessons you encode in your children, your team, your work. And once you begin to live from that higher frame, money stops being a finish line. It becomes a tool, it becomes a symbol, it becomes a seed. And the one who thinks in seeds rather than spoils, who sees money not as a trophy, but as a responsibility, enters a new category of wealth altogether. Legacy is not something you build at the end. It's something you build every day, in how you show up, how you speak, how you decide. It's not in your will, it's in your calendar. It's not just in your donations, it's in your discipline. The wealthy know this. They move with the awareness that someone is watching, someone is learning, a son, a daughter, a teammate, a stranger, and so they carry themselves with integrity even when no one claps. They honor their commitments, not just to impress, but to instill. They know that the most powerful form of wealth is not what you earn, it's what you duplicate. The values, the frameworks, the mindset, that is the inheritance that matters. Because money can be lost or stolen, but standards become culture, and culture outlives you. That's why the true builder works on themselves first, because your character is the ceiling of your influence. Let's speak now about simplicity. Because while the world scrambles for more, the wealthy are often doing less, not because they're lazy, but because they're clear. They have stripped away the non-essential. They have reduced noise. They've decluttered not just their homes, but their decisions, their priorities, their emotional reactions. This simplicity gives them speed, it gives them peace, it gives them clarity. And from that place of stillness, they make sharper moves, they see further, they speak with weight. Simplicity is not weakness, it is mastery. And if you want to attract wealth, you must begin asking yourself, what am I holding on to that no longer matches where I'm going? Let go of it. The behavior, the relationship, the story, the chaos. Wealth is not heavy, it is clean. And the more you simplify, the more space you create. And wealth fills space. Another trait of those who build wealth that lasts is decisiveness. Not impulsiveness, decisiveness. They move when the moment calls. They trust their preparation. They are not frozen by fear or paralyzed by possibilities. They gather data, but they don't drown in it. They understand that fortune favors the bold, not the reckless, but the ready. If you examine the life of anyone who built something great, you will find this thread, a moment when they decided, when they stopped wavering, when they chose to bet on themselves not once but daily. And that decision, repeated in the face of doubt, became the turning point. Wealth does not chase the hesitant. It follows the one who moves with resolve. So ask yourself, where in my life am I still hesitating? Where am I still explaining instead of executing? Choose now. Decide now, because decision is the door to destiny. Let's talk about multiplication. Once your systems are in place, once your thinking is clear, once your habits are consistent, the next level is to multiply. That means teaching, empowering, delegating, investing, not just in markets but in people. Wealth multiplies through leadership, through multiplication of effort, through building something that continues without your hand in every task. The person who multiplies is no longer working just for income, they are working for impact, and impact scales when systems meet people. The most profitable businesses, the most powerful brands, the most influential movements, they didn't grow because one person worked harder, they grew because that person learned to multiply. You must ask, who can I empower? What can I automate? Where can I replicate success? The multiplier stops thinking about how to do it all and starts thinking about how to build others who can. And that shift unlocks another level of time, freedom, and wealth. Now let's speak about silence. The wealthiest minds are often the quietest in the room. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they don't need to say everything. They've learned the value of restraint, of watching, of waiting, of choosing words like currency spent with intention, not emotion. This silence gives them control. While others speak to fill the void, the builder speaks only when it adds weight. They don't explain themselves to everyone. They don't justify their path. They let their results speak, and this silence is powerful. It protects energy, it deepens perception, it creates mystique, and mystique, when matched with results, commands respect. So if you want wealth to recognize you, stop broadcasting every thought. Start becoming someone whose actions are so precise that words become optional. Let your discipline speak. Let your consistency speak. Let your work speak. As we move toward the close of this journey, remember, wealth is not a destination, it's a reflection. a reflection of your order, your patterns, your posture, your identity. It is not reserved for the chosen, it is created by the committed. And the most powerful force you can bring to that creation is not speed, not skill, but alignment. When your values, habits, environment, and vision point in the same direction, nothing can stop you because you've removed the resistance. You've canceled the contradiction. You've chosen harmony over hustle, and that harmony becomes your engine. It keeps you steady when the winds rise. It keeps you sharp when others are soft. And it invites wealth to come to you not as a prize, but as a mirror, a reflection of the kind of person you've decided to become. Now I want to speak directly to you. Yes, you've made it to this part not by accident, but because something in you is rising. Something in you knows it was never about luck, about waiting, about hoping. It was always about deciding. And you have decided. You've made the shift. You've taken ownership. And from this moment forward, you don't need to chase anything. You simply need to keep building, in silence, in structure, in service, in clarity. Let wealth do what it naturally does, find its way to those who are truly ready,